Hi and welcome to Data, Pharma and Fika. My name is Stephanie and today's topic is about a project that was actually inspired by Moneyball. It is about how a man uses statistics to win baseball games. Our guest is Hiro Mori, who is head of early asset technologies at UCB. In his role, he drives innovation in drug development trials. Clinical trials have high level of uncertainty and risk, and bringing innovations such as novel biomarkers introduce more uncertainty, but they can also optimize clinical performance. Hiro's job is to understand how to make technology adoption decisions in this reality. So what does this have to do with Moneyball? Moneyball is about the Oakland A's baseball club and how their general manager Billy Beane was able to assemble a competitive and successful team despite having a very limited budget. Beane was able to do so by using statistics to find undervalued players to form a team that created wins. Thanks to this approach, the A's was the first team to win 20 consecutive games in 2002. It's a very inspiring story, one that inspired Hiro. And so Hiro and the Captario team used statistics and Monte Carlo simulation to evaluate innovative technologies in drug development. So let's welcome Hiro to tell us more about how statistical models can estimate how much technologies contribute in clinical trials and how they can help in decision making. Big welcome to Data, Pharma, and Fika, Hiro. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for having me. I'm doing great.
It's a pleasure to have you on this podcast. I do wish that we were able to do this in person. We tried, but due to timing, we decided to do this recording through video. Do you have your coffee and fika ready?
Definitely my coffee and my Belgian cinnamon bun.
Perfect. Then I think we are ready to start. So Hiro, you have the important job of evaluating technologies in order to optimize clinical performance. What are the challenges digital biomarkers face today?
So recently, there has been a lot of excitement about digital technologies in healthcare and more specifically in drug development. We all believe the sensors and data will bring much better detection of a patient's outcome. But the reality is very little has made tangible impact in drug development, bringing new drug to market. So there is a challenge.
I am curious to know how Moneyball inspired you to solve these challenges. Like, how did it all start? Were you sitting in the couch one day watching the movie and it all clicked?
Well, I love that movie. So I watch it often, but what lit a light bulb in my head was starting with what matters. So the Peter Brand character in the movie says, our goal shouldn't be to buy players. Our goal should be to buy wins. And I thought, in pharma, we try a lot of technologies. We do a lot of pilots, but it often feels like we are throwing technologies at the problem, or people might say gadgets at the problem, and see what sticks. And it's not very efficient. And I thought, okay, Oakland Athletics, and I should put my hat on because I always like to get in the mood. It's a small team, but they figured out what matters to their performance and chose the players not based on what's famous, who's famous,
Exactly.
but rather what mattered. So I thought maybe we could apply this to our business. So that's where I got the idea, and all started from there.
They wanted to secure home runs, and I guess you wanted to do the same. But in the movie, using that statistical approach to evaluate players, it wasn't widely used. Today, to what extent is statistics used to evaluate biomarkers to improve clinical performance?
So let me just clarify by saying in pharmaceutical industry, drug development, we use a lot of statistics. So clinical studies are designed with statistical power and establishing scientific evidence in mind. So statistics are very much used. But when it comes to evaluating technologies, we didn't see so much of the standard, say, hypothesis testing methods to apply in technology evaluation. So we saw an opportunity to address the uncertainties we had with Monte Carlo model to create a model that's useful for comparing different scenarios. So statistics are used in pharmaceutical industry, but there are different types of statistical modeling that could apply, maybe more innovatively in this case. That's what we did.
So I guess you wanted to explore ways to be efficient with technology adoption in clinical trials. You worked on a project where a prototype was built using a statistical model that quantified the impact of technologies. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. Stephanie, you've heard of statisticians saying all models are wrong, but some are useful. Yes. And we adopted that spirit, knowing that in the world of uncertainties, here we're talking about the drug development and digital technologies, we knew we would get it wrong if we tried to make it precise. So what we did was to embrace the uncertainties and compare probabilities, or maybe probabilities of probabilities of drug development study success, which we called probability of study success, POSS. And that's how we created a model that's directionally indicative of the technology impact. So the model would point to, is it going to improve the performance or not improve the performance, and perhaps the magnitude of it. We didn't think about decimal points. We weren't trying to be precise, but we were trying to come up with meaningful comparisons between using technologies, not using technologies, and perhaps in future, different technologies. For example, you can monitor patients' health using digital technologies at home, something patients wear 24/7, or you can improve patient measurements in hospital, in clinic, when they come to visit the study clinician. That would be two different applications of similar technologies. We wanted to understand the difference in magnitude, which would do better for a particular drug development study design. That's what we aim to do with this prototype.
When evaluating technologies with that prototype, one can see the impact from two perspectives. One, the impact in the clinical trial, and two, the impact on long-term activities such as market and launch. What benefits or what effects do you see from these two perspectives?
Sure. So let me go back to Moneyball. So Oakland Athletics found the keys to win was to get the player out on base. So that was their formula. And in pharmaceutical development, we found technologies can improve patient selection accuracy and outcome monitoring accuracy. So if we can help drug development studies by making sure that enrolled patients have the right disease or right conditions the drug can treat, that benefits. Also, if we could make sure we are picking up the right therapeutic effect signals. So if it's a painkiller, reduction of headache. In case of Parkinson's, that might be reduction in tremor or bradykinesia. If we could detect those more accurately, that would benefit drug development. And combination of the two could be more powerful. So that's where we focus on. And the model was built to run scenarios to include technologies for patient selection and outcome monitoring, and either or. So the model is designed to run Monte Carlo scenarios on those different combination of technology adoption.
So how about when the drug is approved and treating real patients?
I think the same technologies may be applicable treating the real patients upon drug being approved and marketed by selecting the right patients or making sure the right patients are selected and those patients treated are having the right outcome. I think that technologies can help in a similar way as we looked at for clinical study applications.
If we add a third perspective to all of this, what would the value from such a model be for technology providers? How much do the technology providers know about clinical impact?
I think they know intuitively. That's why they pursue developing technologies, and we hear their passion, and they are convinced the technologies and the measurements that are novel make significant difference to patients' health and drug development. But we hardly ever hear a particular number. It's hard to quantify. So that is one of the challenges we have in this industry, that everybody knows there is a potential. So if we can detect the treatment outcome in a, say, Parkinson's disease by monitoring patients' motor functions, that would improve care. That would also improve clinical study performance. But by how much, and how much of impact that really matter in terms of, let me just generally say, study economics, that's hardly ever talked about. So I think the technology providers often face the challenges of their or our inability to quantify the value, and that makes it really difficult to write a business case, right? So because they cannot say how much of economic value to put in the financial model, for example. It's hard to do for pharma, hard to do for the technology providers. And that, I think that makes long-term partnerships rather challenging.
It does sound like more collaboration is needed in the future. And that ties into my next question. What is next? How does the future look like? How would you want the selection of technologies in clinical trials to work in the future?
Thank you, Stephanie. I think collaboration is exactly the way to go. And I want to see collaboration, not just having parties sitting at the table, but I would like to see parties, pharmaceutical companies, technology providers, and other stakeholders sitting at the table using the same model and testing assumptions testing scenarios, and agreeing on the values of technologies from the outset, so that there is agreed value each player is bringing, receiving, and on that basis, collaboration could be much more concrete. So that's what I would like to see happen with a tool, and collaboration, not just with a single pharmaceutical company to a single technology provider, but it should be more broad. There's a saying in pharma that we don't compete on biomarkers or diagnostics, we compete on the drug. And it would benefit the ecosystem of drug development if we agreed beforehand to develop standard digital measurements and validated them. That would benefit us all, and that would benefit the patient's care as well. So that would be a better, more collaborative way forward. And that's what I like to see happen. And the model is I hope this becomes one of the triggers for such activities.
Hiro, we're getting to the end of this interview, but I have one last question for you. At the end of the movie Moneyball, the Boston Red Sox made Beane an offer to come and work for them instead. That check was for $12.5 million, but Beane turned it down. What would you have done?
Well, I would go into Red Sox. It's an appreciation of the model and new way of working. But in a more serious note, the team of Red Sox's resources and the great players there would have made the model much more effective. And that would be unbeatable team, even. But I would say, though, in pharma, we don't compete on biomarkers. So I think bigger companies have a duty to lead and bring the rest of the industry forward. So for that, definitely I would go to Red Sox.
You would have switched teams.
I need another hat.
Thank you so much, Hiro, for taking the time and being part of this episode and for sharing this project, this way of thinking where uncertainty is embraced, and showing how statistical models can be useful in decision making. For those who want to know more about this project and prototype, you can read about it in the publication made in Digital Biomarkers Carger Journal, written by Hiro and his colleague at UCB and Captario. The link will be in the description box and with all the contact information needed. Make sure to check it out. Hiro, I look forward to seeing you in your next development. Thank you, and thank you to everyone who tuned in. I will see you next time.
Thank you.